Okay, well, welcome everybody to the webinar. We're just delighted to be together as a group. We have Akin Tosyali from 511 Tactical, and we're going to be talking about getting the most out of CDPs, customer data platforms. I do have a set of slides that I'm going to put on, but it's not a presentation or a lecture in any way. These are thought provokers for us to define what is a CDP and think through how do we apply CDPs for solving marketing problems. I'll be going in and out and asking Akin hard questions about how he chose CDPs and how he defines success and measures success. And so all of this is unscripted, and we are going to send out the link to the recording today and the PowerPoint as a follow-up. If there are questions along the way, please put them in chat, and I'll be looking as the moderator to the questions. And I think this is a great opportunity to ask an expert like Akin what he thinks about the state of customer data platforms. So let's do this. Akin, if you don't mind, I'm going to start with a slide or two to just frame the problem. Then I'll ask you to introduce yourself.
Sounds good.
I'm great, and we're lucky that you're with us today. So let me zoom in on this for everybody. Okay, so if we talk about getting the most out of a customer data platform, I guess the place to start here is to say, boy, have you noticed there's so much hype and jargon everywhere when it comes to customer data platforms, artificial intelligence. I mean, in the marketing technology world, for whatever reason, things catch fire, and then everyone wants to talk about it. And then there's so much misinformation and vendors, throwing their hat in the ring and pretending, to solve this problem. And everyone, really needs to take a step back and say, well, what are we investing in CDPs for? How do we get the most out of it? And what's the goal of it? So I wanted to start by setting a baseline. We'll do some introductions, and then we'll think about how to define success and, make sure that we're being good marketing users here and not just, falling prey to the hysteria that's going on. So let's start with, I think as marketing leaders, whether you're on the brand side, the services side, I think as marketing leaders, we all have a pretty good idea of what customer data platforms are supposed to do. The word is customer. So customer data platforms will do things such as improve the way that brands can recognize their customers, whether those are known or unknown visitors. CDPs, we all know this in our heart, can help us make the customer experience more seamless across devices, across channels, and more personalized for them. So brands are speaking to them, and CDPs are using data and technology so that marketers like us can optimize the messages, the marketing communications, the images, the offers, for how we optimize those experiences and predict what comes next, like what is the next best offer. So my goal for today, as we're getting together as a group, and again, this is for both the brand side and services side, is are we getting the most out of CDPs? Are we proving the value and focusing on solving business problems? So as I teach this class at Northwestern, I'll do an introduction in a second, I teach my students to be able to deal with chief financial officers and make the case that this is not just asking for budget. There's a business case here. There are return scenarios, and we are proving the value of that investment. And when we work with, as marketing people, technology leaders, we want them to see us as allies. We don't want them to just see us as, adding yet another tool to the things that they have to maintain, that we're being articulate with them about how we simplify the marketing stack, the marketing technology stack, and then, how we're looking for business outcomes from this. So let me do an introduction for myself first, and then I'll hand this over to my partner. I'm Roy Wollen. I teach CDPs at Northwestern University, part of my graduate level course work that I do. And I teach digital analytics, marketing metrics, and B2B marketing at Northwestern. I also lead a CDP marketing agency called Hansa. And at Hansa, we help brands choose, implement, and run CDPs. I'll give you my secret. The secret to the success when I work with everybody is start with the needs analysis and don't fall in love with a pretty interface. We don't start with demos. We don't look at interfaces. We start with what do we want this technology to do? So 511 is a client of ours, and that is my cue to stop sharing the screen and welcome my esteemed colleague and partner, Akin Tosyali. Akin, introduce yourself.
Hi, everybody. My name is Akin Tosyali. I'm Senior Director of Digital Marketing at 511 Tactical.
What's your role at 511 in terms of CDPs?
Sure. So I lead all digital marketing efforts. So that's all digital channels on the execution side. From a business value perspective, I can define my job as within our direct-to-consumer business. I am really leading acquisition and retention of our customers, consumers within the business. And
Okay.
I basically use all these digital channels to achieve that business outcome.
Okay, great. So now I want to put another slide up to define the problem, but then come right back out and ask you how you do it, because you're very good at what you do, and I think everyone can learn from you. So stand by. Let me set up the problem this way and zoom in on this for everyone. Okay, so here's another kind of basic view of what we call the customer buying journey. And these are customers, consumers coming in and interacting with brands. Okay, so a lot of this is well known, but I want to take a step and talk about how CDPs help us with this. So nobody really knows what starts or triggers a customer journey. It could be an ad, it could be an email. We have the thing in our head that we're controlling customer behavior. And when we email a customer that they're interested in us, can pick us out of a cluttered inbox and then buy something, that's in our heads. Right. It's not maybe what they want to do. So customers are zigzagging in and out of channels. They don't really trust brands until they get to know them. They're having, interactions with social media like influencers, user reviews, people that they trust from their own community, family and friends. They're searching, they're comparing, they're evaluating, they're looking for deals. They will eventually land on owned media, whether that's websites or mobile sites. They'll have mobile experiences all across the way. And lo and behold, they may not stay in the direct-to-consumer model. They may go to a store or a bank or a dealership. Absolutely. And then there's a conversion. These are moments with the brands, and CDPs will help us win in these moments. So what, from a consumer perspective, do they expect from us, the brand? They are cranky. They are expecting that we recognize them, that we are aware of who they are, and that we know what they've done before, right? And they are looking for seamless experiences and get cranky when we ask them to identify themselves across those channels. And they enjoy us looking for and anticipating their future needs. So let me do 2 slides, and then I'm going to ask our expert. So say somebody's on your website right now, I need shoes, okay? So the question I have for you guys as you're thinking about this is, who is this person? Have we seen them before? How valuable are they? How valuable will they be? And what will they do in the future? And this is where CDPs come into play. So I want to show you a slide. This is a little thick, but I'm making a point with this. With this slide, this is from the Boston Consulting Group. There's data ingestion, there's customer identity and consolidation, there's audiences, and we're segmenting audiences, we're using personas, magic word, we're predicting what those audiences will do, we're using AI for decisioning, and then activating them out to the channels. How many people want to see this again? I'm going to give you the same thing and then ask Akin to comment on this. Do you see a pattern? This is from Gartner. And Gartner is talking about, they're using different words, data collection, profile unification, segmentation. It's the same thing. Their personas are deal seekers, new visitors, and things like that. I think we can do better. And then I'm filling in a box here about CDPs predicting inclusion into these personas, personalizing those moments, activating what comes next. And these are the channels. And one of the channels, look on the bottom, is Internet of Things. And one of Hansa's clients is Keurig, where a consumer has a coffee brewer. The coffee brewer is Internet of Things, communicating with them, but also replenishing the K-Cup pods. And so that's cool, but it's also for a way for Keurig to differentiate its brand against, say, Amazon, and it's good for competitive strategy. So CDPs are making all this work. So now let me come out and, ask our expert to comment to that. So you have a vision, Akin, of CDPs. How do you see, when you talk about and define CDPs, do you immediately go to the technology, like these are the phases and the functions of a CDP, or how do you define CDPs so people can understand what you're using them for?
Right. So, Obviously, Roy, as you know, it's all about who you're talking to, right? If I'm talking to a MarTech person versus our CFO, the answer is slightly different. But at the end of the day, what I come back to is what a CDP does is it helps the marketers become more relevant with the specific audiences that they're talking to. Me as a consumer, it drives me crazy when I get an email or an ad that has nothing to do with who I am or what I'm interested in right now, right? They just pick up a signal somewhere just because I read a blog or I even touched something, right? I hovered over an ad, let's say, right? All of a sudden there's a false positive and all of a sudden I'm getting bombarded by that brand, by that product. They have no, I don't want to say care because care is a strong word. I know they care, but they are just they're connecting the wrong dots, right? Just because there's a signal of me, let's say, interested in blue widgets, right? Well, maybe I was just looking for a definition of a blue widget, right? They make no differentiation if I am, for example, am I a first-time customer or a repeat customer, right? When I get emails, this is key in emails, right? When you're trying to communicate your brand promise, your repeat customers already know what your brand promise is. You just need to stay true to that. But a new consumer is still trying to understand you, still trying to learn from you. So this is where, early emails to a new consumer needs to have a lot more examples of who you are and why you should buy from me. I mean, let's think about this. We are in the apparel industry. I'm just going to assume that there's 10,000 brands, that can sell a shirt or a pair of pants. Why should anybody buy from 511? Right? That's a fantastic question. Not everybody's going to buy from 511. I know that. So then the question is, okay, who are the audiences that could possibly buy from 511, and who are the ones that have already bought from 511? Then a CDP allows me to look at my current customer base and allow me to understand the cohorts of customers I have, right? And we have identified 4 cohorts, and they're very different. Why they buy 511 is different.
Right.
And we got to understand that. So the best use case is when John Doe makes a purchase on my website. I, as a marketer that's always trying to do the right thing, I really want to understand who John Doe is most likely to be. Is it cohort 1, 2, 3, 4?
Great. So I think that's the key. So if I were to ask you, how does a CDP move the needle forward from the old worlds of customer databases? In the old world, we had RFM segments. And
Yep.
John Doe is in market because he just visited our site or just bought something. But you're taking us to a new place because you're trying to assign John to one of those 4 personas, and you have primary research behind it that says persona 3 is the person that may not be aware of your brand, that may prefer REI Patagonia, right. But you have to make a different appeal to them to get them to learn your story versus persona 1, which might be the core audience. So the question is, it sounds good on a PowerPoint. Like, how do CDPs actually get that done? Like, how do you take a step forward from RFM segmentation to activating personas, recognizing and activating personas? How do you do it?
Well, that's an excellent question. We can probably use a whole different session on that one, but I'm pretty sure you want me to summarize it. So, full disclosure, we are actually in the process of moving from one CDP to the other one. And the way I can really answer your question is, when you, just like any platform, once you get into it, you're excited, you get value out of it, and you use it for a while, and then you realize that you have other needs. And so from a CDP perspective, we have realized that at the life stage that we are, we need more third-party data in our CDP, because I not only want to know that you are John Doe living at 123 Main Street in Chicago, I also want to know your interests, your hobbies. I want to know other brands that you interact with. I want to be able to predict your lifestyle, right? Number one. Number two, we didn't realize this 4 years ago when we picked our first CDP, but we realized that we as a brand, we really want a CDP that has its own ESP, email platform. Because what we have found out is when we try to say, oh, let's push a specific email to our first-time retail consumers, right? Let's say that we have a list of 1,000 people, we send it to our ESP says, wait a minute, out of those 10,000 people, only 3,000 are mailable. And we just chase our tails trying to figure out where the issue is, and we don't want to do that. So my point is, with the CDP that we just picked, we wanted to make sure that we are using something that can collect e-commerce data, it can collect retail data, it has third-party data, it can help us build the models, it has all the connections to our display platform, social media, search, Twitter, everything else. And it has those prediction algorithm capabilities as well.
I think you're arguing why the ESP in a vacuum can't touch this functionality because it's the same
Correct.
customer. They may prefer
Correct.
email, they may be an opt-out, and therefore we have to reach them through an ad. But
Right.
it's not a matter of just reaching them and pummeling them with email. It's a
Exactly.
matter of trying to figure out what they want and activating them and optimizing that message across all those channels.
100%. If you just have an email and you're using, let's say, and emails, don't get me wrong, obviously email channel is the 800-pound gorilla in the room still, right? Nobody talks about it, right? We all talk about TikTok, social media, we all talk about sexy objects, but email is still a massive driver of the business. Now, if you're using email and you're simply using web signals, what happens is, well, guess what? Roy Wollen comes to the website. I come to the website. We looked at the same product. We will both get the same email. But we are very different, right? We could be in two different states. We could be two different genders. We could be in two different life cycles. You could be a new consumer. I could be a repeat consumer. Yet we are getting the same email just because we visited the same product page. So
exactly right.
This is where that disconnect happens. It is, and I just it's a soapbox topic of mine. Just because you can do something doesn't mean you should do something, right? Just because you have 100,000 visitors coming to a product page, you should not be sending out 100,000 people the same email.
Right. Perfect. Okay. Now I want to change gears on you a little bit. And I like my slides because it helps me formulate a good question. And then I'm going to come back to you. And this one's going to be hard. Okay. So let me get the slide up there. I think I scared you.
I'm scared now.
Don't be too scared. I think you mentioned this yourself. Let me blow this up. And so you talked about different audiences within your firm, and let me blow this guy up. So this is our cranky CFO, right? And I have a hypothesis about what the CFO is looking for from marketing people in general. But since we're talking about CDPs, my question to you, and I'm going to come out right away, is how do you prove the incrementality to this person? What are they looking for if they're cranky and they're looking as a marketing person that yet again, you want more budget? You know, like how do you ask for budget and how do you prove the value? Let me come out as I do that.
Right.
How do you prove the value of the CDP? And I'm going to go back to that guy and talk a little bit about him too. How do you do it?
I'm going to answer your question, and I'm going to even answer a difficult question. How do we prove the incrementality of a CDP, which is a massive project, which is also competing with a bunch of other capital projects?
Correct. That's correct.
So we have a steering committee meeting at 511 Tactical where all these big projects are presented to the executive team. And everybody has their own projects that they're trying to push, right? We want to build X, we want to do Y, we want to do Z, right? And all of these things need money, and we have only a certain, small amount of money. So, where do we put the money into? So we look at projects multiple ways. It is not just the return on investment.
Okay.
It is also, how long it's going to take us to make that return. What's our 1 year, 3 year, 5 year return on investment on this project? Number one. Number two, what is the overall business value, strategic value you are going to gain for doing this, right? Because again, as a retail organization, you know, more warehouses would definitely help us more, right? More customer service people would help us more. A faster website would help us more. A CDP would help us more. We cannot do it all. We simply can't, right? So we got to pick and choose. So this is where, in addition to the ROI, I had to basically paint a picture of the strategic value we are going to get. And again, it is about the relevance. Two different ways. A, for our current consumers, for us to be able to predict what are they going to resonate with next, number one. Number two, which for any email marketer, the inactive audience is usually a significant size of audience. And you can have millions of emails in that inactive audience file. And you know that you have to be extremely careful if you want to send an email out to those cold audiences. I mean, you can get your hand slapped. Your open rates are going to tank. You are going to get a lot of unsubscribes. So, you know, it has been a question that we have been trying to be extremely careful with. And one way that CDP can help is if, usually most email folks will say, okay, if they have opened up an email or if they clicked on an email in the last X number of months, maybe I can send an email to them again, right? Because they are now interacting with the brand. With a CDP, you can say, well, if they also visited my website, I can start emailing to them, right? With a CDP that has third-party data, you can say, hey, they have made multiple visits around content pieces that relate to what I'm selling.
With other people's websites?
With community message boards, where you are saying, hey, this person, Roy Wollen, is all of a sudden, reading up on, wine again. So, hey, it looks like he's back in the life cycle of buying wine. So I'm just going to go and ping him again, even though he hadn't bought from me in the last 3 years. So this is where incrementality of a CDP comes in, because you can start doing things that you weren't able to do before. We will be able to email past consumers that have not engaged with us in a long time. Number one. Number two, we will, from an acquisition perspective, everybody, cares about acquisition very much. There's the quantity of acquisition and there's also quality of acquisition. Just because you got 10,000 new consumers last month, you don't know what their LTV is going to be over the long term, right? It's always a big question. So what if there was a way where we could say, you know what? Out of the 300 million consumers in the United States, here's the 100 million that buys pants. Here's the 20 million that would buy cargo pants. And here's the 15 million that would buy cargo pants for work. So we know now, by the way, that I just made that number up. We now know who our target audience is. Gotcha. So as much of that 10,000 monthly acquisition I'm driving, I can get that from the 15 million of my addressable market. It's a big win for me, because now I get incrementality on lifetime value. Because now the quantity of the acquisition may not change, but the quality is going to change, because I know these are going to be a lot more likely to be repeat buyers.
It's interesting. And the CDPs help you. It's not just addressable market, it's obtainable market, correct? And you're using the CDP to pick up those signals and to whittle the acquisition pool down. It's interesting. Absolutely. All right, so back to the cranky CFO. All right, let me put this in full screen mode. And then I want to talk about some of my experiences with this guy. So we talked about this. To me, when you have a meeting with a CFO, they are listening to a radio station, right? And they're basically seeing me as a marketing guy. And if I talk to them about, strategic goals for marketing, things like personalizing messages, they're already tuned out. They're basically saying, how do I make money at that? And if I'm presenting to finance, I'm sticking to tangible return on investment, return on marketing investment goals. So I'm thinking this guy is looking at me saying, I see a business case. Okay, so step one is I have a business case, but is it believable? Did I account for all the costs, right? Is your ROMI better than my alternatives? You touched on this a second ago, and you talked about payback period. CDPs are not cheap. So do I make that money back within the first year? Does that require 3 years? And then what are my alternatives? Should I take that same investment and improve something in the operations of the call center? Will you, I'm looking at Akin Tosyali, are you going to be accountable for this?
Right. And before you go to accountability, Roy, I want to actually give tip for everybody else. In that last bullet point of, our return on media investment, one of the best things that I was able to do was I actually worked with our finance team in building my projections. And it was multiple meetings where I wanted to make sure that I had built my definitions for costs, revenue, because there's not just the platform cost, there's the integration costs, right? There's a project management time that has to come in. There is the IT time that has to be built in. There is the marketing time that has to be built in, right? And all of those have to be vetted out. And I made sure that I literally went line by line, column by column with my finance counterparts to make sure that we built the definitions for projected revenue, projected costs, the way that they like to see it.
I'm so glad you said that. Right.
Versus the way I see it.
Yep.
Because at the end of the day, this is a finance decision, and usually it's the CFO that's usually either going to put the kibosh on it or is going to give a thumbs up, right?
Right.
On the marketing side, we want to do everything.
I know how you work, and I saw that work. And what I can compliment you on, and a best practice for everybody on the webinar, is make finance people your friend, make them your ally, use their definitions, use their formulas. If they want to see IRR, if they want to see payback, if they're calculating costs, CapEx and OpEx, we know those concepts. And if we don't do it their way, if we're freelancing, then we're marketing guys, we're subjective, and we're talking about message optimization, and it goes right over their head. They know what it is. But if you adopt their templates, which you did, and talk about the use cases for how are you going to prove the value, then all of a sudden, at least they're paying attention, and they can see that you're putting in the effort to put it into their language. So well done on that. I want to talk about use cases. So, rather than me put up a slide and then ask you for your reactions, let me just do this straight away. Like, how important are use cases? I think I know the answer, but be specific. What are the use cases? Are there use cases for retention? Are there use cases for acquisition? I mean, throw us a bone. What are your use cases and how important are they?
Yep. So in everything I do in my team is related to acquisition or retention. I keep saying that, I keep hammering it, because if what we are doing is not directly related to acquisition or retention, it just needs to be deprioritized. Marketing, our team, this is what we are hired for, right? So when we are doing use cases, we have retention use cases, we have acquisition use cases. In retention, in both retention as well as acquisition, we split it again 2 ways. The use cases that we have right now that we must continue to have. Without those continuations, it would be a critical stop for the business, right? The second ones are the incremental use cases that we really want to have, but we don't right now. A capability, a function, a feature that we want to have, but we don't right now. So what we do is, obviously you helped us build that spreadsheet of, 4 acquisition, retention, stuff that we must continue to have, and stuff that we want to have. And then the question becomes kind of like almost like scoring or weighting.
Right.
Weighting is the right word of these items, because we know we want to have a new function. How does that compare to another new function we are looking for?
Right. I don't know. I don't know how you would do it without those weights, and that's your value add as a marketing person. And not to interrupt your flow, but if you articulate a range of use cases, and
Yep.
now you're prioritizing those use cases about how effective they will be, how impactful they'll be. Do you take it to, I know the answer to this, by the way, do you take it to the next level and say, therefore, this is how much incremental revenue and margin those use cases will bring us? Do you go to that level?
Absolutely, yes. And here is a very fun fact. So what I did was, when we had that feature, I went to our vendor to be, and I said, okay, so we are going to get this. I said, tell me who is using this function, which one of your clients, and all of that client, what kind of business value are they getting? So I didn't ask for a specific name, I just asked for the industry. But what I was able to do for our CFO is I built a picture saying this function for another retailer that has 1,000 employees with an e-com site, when they turn it on, they had a 0.8% improvement in their email conversion rate. So 0.8% incremental improvement in conversion rate in email equals this many traffic, this much new transactions. This is the AOV. So here's the additional revenue. And I actually build a pro forma,
right,
for all those new functions, features we are going to get. And each one had a column called reason to believe.
That I like that.
Right. And we call RTB, which is like real-time buy for anybody that has digital marketing.
I remember.
Real-time buy. It is reason to believe, which was, okay, we have these two brands that did this. The range of incrementality was this versus that percent. This was the channel. It was on paid social. It was on paid search. It was in website. It was on email. It was in SMS, whatever it is. This is the range. So let's just take the average.
Gotcha.
And then if the numbers look good, what I recommend is you actually give them a haircut, right?
Yeah,
because
right.
you
Be
don't want to.
conservative.
Exactly. So I gave a haircut to the numbers I had, and that's what I presented to our CFO.
Okay. What was the reaction? Is the CFO like yet another marketing person with rosy pictures, or is he or she looking for proof points, evidence, pilot programs? I mean, what's the reaction that you got?
Yeah, well, yes, our CFO is not a grumpy person, number one, but he's extremely thorough. So he made his own homework. You know, he called around. He made sure that this vendor is as good as they claim that they are. In our interview sessions for referral, we push the referrals really hard on, well, how do you know that this was incremental instead of business as usual? Right? Did you have a test and control in place?
Right.
Which is always key. But it really helps when you do when the marketing does its own homework before those presentations of the reason to believes, and lists those out in fine detail and presents it. It just builds a lot more trust in your projections.
I agree. And there's that accountability that we touched on. So I want to change gears on you. One of the benefits of a CDP is, yes, it's all about first party data coming in, and that's both known and unknown customers. But eventually you can use that and scale that up. And what I mean by that is onboarding or uploading that first party data up to Google, up to Meta, up to DMPs, and trying to put trying to use that first party data in a customer match kind of use case. So I want to talk a little bit about that. How does that work? Because the minute you do that, the ads that you run on Google, whether you're constraining search results to people that you either know to put an ad up in front of them, or to suppress existing customers, or to find lookalikes, for people that resemble your best customers or the personas you're going after. The minute you start onboarding that first party data, then all of a sudden the cost per clicks go up. and you're competing with other optimizations of digital media like PMAX and so on. So how do you're an expert in this, how do you use CDPs to onboard first-party data? And then does it, can you prove can you get over the incremental costs, by doing that? Like, how does that work?
Yep. So, unlike a CRM, CDP has multiple inputs and outputs on a daily basis, right? And the nice thing about the CDP is, to that audience question you have, let me give you a perfect example for this one. And this is recent, right? Let's say that your retail stores are having a special, right? Coming to the store, you buy X, you get Z for free, right? Now, you can easily use, without a CDP, you can easily say, okay, here is my entire e-com customer file, because I want to tell all my consumers about this retail special, right? So here's my entire customer file, go and send it out. And what happens is you're going to be sending out emails to people that are 100 miles from your nearest store. And if they open it up, they'll probably not like it, right? And we all know that, 50 miles in Kansas City is different than 50 miles in New York City, right?
Yeah, good point.
So this is how it all ties. So instead, what we are doing now is we are identifying people that are within driving distance of our retail stores. Once we define that audience, first-party data audience, we then push that audience to our DSP, ESP, social media, so that what we are doing is we are making sure that that is the audience that hears about this retail offer, regardless of where we get to match them, right? I mean, Criteo does a good job for us in display side. Facebook does also a fantastic job. But to your point, the costs become much higher, right? I could have easily put together that creative, given it to Facebook, saying, hey, Facebook, use your AI to show it to as many people as possible at the lowest engagement rate. Well, I might be getting engagement from people that are not near a store. So they are liking what I'm saying, but they are not going to come in. So yes, my CPC is much higher because it is harder for Facebook or Google to identify and allow me to reach to a very specific audience, right? The more specific I am on my targeting, the higher the CPC is. This is where I'm going to go back to relevancy, right? What's your goal? If your goal is to build awareness for a sale, regardless if those people are going to buy or not, that's a different problem to solve for. What I'm trying to solve for is to build awareness of a retail store promotion with people that are likely to come to the retail store and make a purchase. That's a whole different problem to solve.
I think that's the key, that if you optimize messages and you optimize channels, you're getting up to one level. If you're finding the audiences across channels and across devices, which is what a CDP does, it costs more, but you can, it's more effective in my mind, in theory anyway, because you're reaching the right person in their different life cycle with the right message across media, across devices. And now a CDP has a real differentiator.
That's right.
You're the guy that has to make it work, though. And you have to go back to the CFO and the steering committee, as you mentioned. How do you do that? Do you have executive level KPIs? Do you have quarterly meetings? Do you give them updates? Hey, good news. Or are you, how do they want to consume, the news? Is it working, basically? Akin, is this working?
Yeah, we have multiple dashboards for our executive team. We definitely report a number of new versus returning consumers for retail versus e-commerce. We are also reporting the omnichannel customer count, which is a subset of the returning customer. We report lifetime value on a monthly basis, both our e-com versus retail versus omnichannel, year over year, month over month. What do they look like? We report our NPS score. Our NPS score is like 9.2 right now. It's extremely high.
Not too
That's
shabby.
because, yeah, our consumers really love the brand. They love the quality. They know that we are a purpose-built brand with purpose-built apparel. So they know the quality of the product that they're getting.
I love that you're mentioning brand metrics in all of this. So it's not just we got a better click-through rate on our email. That's
Right.
wonderful.
No, the most recent one that I launched actually is, I think, one of the coolest ones. Is for our retail stores. You know, retail stores can say, okay, well, you know, I had 1,000 customers that made a purchase from me last month, which is great. What I'm able to do now is divide that 1,000 between new versus return. And then I put them into a trend chart. Because a number on its own doesn't mean much, right? But if it is going up, if it is staying flat, or if it is going down, now that tells you a story. And I'm always looking for the story in the number. So that retail customer split between acquisition and retention is one of my favorite executive reports at the moment.
Oh, that's great. Okay, so we're kind of in the home stretch. I want to talk a little bit about how we do this with clients. I'm doing this along the lines of whether we as a CDP marketing agency help, or whether the CDP vendor does these functions, or whether a client brand advertiser does these functions. Whoever does it, it has to get done. So please indulge me a little bit to talk about, well, what are those functions? And then we'll come out, with some a takeaway about things you can all do, to succeed at this going forward. So let me just blow this up. And I'll invite anyone, if they have questions, to put them in chat before we adjourn today. So let me just build this. So things that brands must do to get the most out of their CDP. And there's learnings here for CDP platform leaders as well, that there's really 4 phases, that there's a CDP build, like what are the opportunities, what are the gaps that we're trying to close and why? So this always starts with a needs analysis.
Yep.
There's always a moment when data, we have to do audits on data to say, well, is our data up for this? And whether that's done internally through an agency, or whether this is professional services through the CDP platform, it must be done. Now, we start thinking about segmentation. If we're smart, we can get to persona-based experiences, meaning what are people looking for and why, and what are their competitive choices? If we can't get to this place, obviously there's primary research here for personas. If the best we can do is segments and life cycle and third-party data, contextual data, that's fine. It's better than nothing. And then, of course, the CDP really shines when you activate the messaging and optimize the experiences. That doesn't happen for free. You don't just click a button and all that gets better. You have to stage all of those messaging. You have to do a program audit and stage the messages ahead of time. I'll go back one step, which is, if you have Melissa, which is a persona, you have what are the messages and where are the priorities and what are the channels and offers that would relate to her. All of that has to be done ahead of time. Now, there's a fair amount of AI to figure this out at runtime, but you still need to input the personas. You still need to call upon digital assets and offers to stage in front of her. So the things from my advice that brands must do to get ready to get the most out of a CDP is to have their customer strategy built out, personas, audiences, to prepare the data for ingestion into the CDP, to build the marketing communication plans across channels, to do a program audit. The way I start is email. Email is the workhorse. Email is the ROI darling, as you had mentioned. Start with a program audit, and this should go beyond email, but that's where we begin, and have an analytics roadmap in place. And I'll just brag a little bit about the work we do. All of this will be distributed, but some of the work that our experts do is about stakeholder interviews and prioritization, and where can we get to, and what's the low-hanging fruit. You see the stuff on the bottom is, based on level of effort and impact on the business, what to work on first. So with your indulgence, I'll just say we've worked with some great clients along the lines of choosing CDPs, Keurig, 511, you guys, soccer.com, and then implementing persona research and implementing CDP plans, Estee Lauder, Rugs USA, Carter's, some great brands we're really proud of. I wanted to end with, so that's great. What do we as on the brand side, what should we be asking the CDP vendors? And then I want to also end with what should we be asking ourselves? So comment on this, if you will. How ask the CDP vendor that you're evaluating, how do you help us with strategy, with roadmap, with business outcomes, not just CDPs as technology projects? Right?
My recommendation, Roy,
Yes.
is to actually start with your second question, which is, what do we expect our CDP to be able to do for us?
Right.
Write it down, because it's going to be your North Star in selecting which CDP is right for you. Because CDP companies are good. Anytime you talk to them, I mean, they have very good salespeople, and they make sure that you realize that their CDP is unique, and each CDP is unique. They all have their own strengths. There is no one perfect CDP for anyone, right? Then we would be just talking about that one vendor, right? There are many CDPs out there. There's no perfect CDP for all organizations. Are you heavy on retail? Are you heavy on e-com? Is the problem you're trying to solve in e-com is retail, or is it the connection between retail and e-com?
Right.
Is the problem you're trying to solve primarily with your social media relevancy? Is email? All of those questions have to be answered, and you have to stay true to them during the entire process.
Yeah.
Once you know what you want and what you need and want, those are two different questions, right? What you need and what you want, then start calling the CDPs and say, hey, this is what I need. And I also would like to get the following extra things.
Right. Very good.
Can you do this? Yes or no?
Yes, I love it. And I think that's the key takeaway from today, that everybody should be able to define what they're asking for in terms of business outcomes, and then look at the CDPs. The demos come last. It's not about easy to use interfaces.
Right.
It's, does it solve the business problem? So I have maybe one more slide, then I'll open this up. I think of this as CDP projects are a chance for us as brands and advertisers to look in the mirror, to ask ourselves, you know, have we done the needs analysis, and are we crystal clear, to your point,
Right.
why we're doing this? Have we thought about who's going to do the implementation work? Because let's not underestimate, there will be internal IT resources required. And do I have the support of IT? And my best practice is IT has to see you as an ally, that you're simplifying the MarTech stack, that you're being articulate with tech about business outcomes. You're not just adding a cool tool because we're all talking about it. And a couple more things. Is our data ready? Have we done an audit on our data, on our email programs, other programs? And then the thing that you've been hammering, Akin, about being able to define and measure success, and then communicate incremental value to the steering committee, the CFO, executives, and so on. So any comments on that? What do we ask ourselves, you know, if we're sitting on your side of the table, if we're on the brand side? What do we have to ask ourselves?
What's the measure of success? What's the measure of success right now? What's the MOS for next 90 days? What's the MOS for next 180 days? What's the MOS for next 1 year? And I love measure of success because it's about measurement. What am I going to measure? Is it time? Is it cost? Is it value? Is it cost reduction? Is it revenue? And what is success, right? And this is where it's perfect, because no two brands are at the same life stage. They have the same needs. So what does success mean to you right now? You know, so identifying those, setting expectations. I cannot emphasize setting expectations enough. Setting expectations with the finance team, setting expectations with marketing leadership, setting expectations with IT, setting expectations with customer service, setting the expectations with the e-commerce team. These all have to be well communicated, so they know, everyone knows what they're going to get, but what they also have to put in.
Yep. Question from the group then is, if we're looking for incremental value, like what does that word mean? If you define that as lifetime value of customers, how do you define it? I mean, there's a lot of legs to, is that repeat purchase? Is that attachment of new products? Is that higher AOV? Is that better clarity on margin and how much we can invest? I mean, how do you define incremental lifetime value?
So incremental lifetime value would be what is the average LTV before the CDP versus what it is after the CDP. And obviously you need to give time to people because everybody will have a different frequency of purchases. But we are not really looking for necessarily, I mean, incremental lifetime value, I think is a great KPI, but I am simply trying to keep things at a simpler level where I'm trying to look for, okay, what is our incrementality in getting one-time customers to a two-time customer?
Yeah, there you go. So
right?
That's a very strategic goal.
Exactly, because if you can get more people to go two-time versus one-time, then your LTV automatically is going to improve, right? Pure math.
Love it. You know, it's funny, that's both a retention goal, getting one-timers to get to the second purchase, but it's feedback loop to the acquisition goal, which is which one-time buyers are most likely to buy again, and how do we get more of those people? And there's an acquisition insight.
Exactly.
It's very good. Okay, last call. If anyone has questions, I'm going to start wrapping up, and maybe I'll come back out because you know, I want to see everybody and open this up. I did also want to say, you know, Hansa is an agency and there's tons of thought leaders. It's not the Roy Wollen show. And I love our leadership team and our group. And I also, you know, wanted to just make sure that, you know, I have a little picture of us here. We, for all of you guys that I saw at the CRMC, I just wanted to say how much fun it was reconnecting with everybody. So I wanted to put the picture up there. Any last questions from everyone? For our expert, this is an opportunity.
Do you have your email address in case anybody's watching this later on and they want to ping you with a question?
Yeah, like right after we hang up. Oh, crap. I remember the key question for Akin. You know, how do you prove the value? But I think this has been a wonderful, I know this has been a wonderful conversation with you, Akin. You know, it is really refreshing to kind of rescue the CDP conversations from a technology discussion and into business outcomes, defining success, getting ready to succeed, onboarding a CDP, and then running a CDP. So you've been extremely valuable to us from a client's perspective, looking ahead to how do we use this beast that we're all creating and how do we prove the value. So I guess that's my cue. Akin, thank you very much for sharing your expertise with the group today.
Thanks so much, Roy. It's a pleasure. Thank you very much for your questions.
And thanks everybody for joining in.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, everyone.